Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our community session at G2I. Today's topic is a developer's guide to entrepreneurship. So today we have Justin Abrams, the CEO of Cause of a Kind, and Mike Rispoli, CTO of Cause of a Kind, joining us for a fireside chat as they share the real story behind leaving stable corporate jobs to build their first AI first agency, or to build their own AI first agency. Sorry. So, if you've ever wondered whether you should take a leap into entrepreneurship, this session is going to give you the clarity and practical insights you need to make that decision. Included in today's discussion, we're going to cover getting your first client, financial decisions that matter, and packaging your services, as well as so much more. I am Michelle Bakels. I'll be your host today. I am a senior technical program director for G2I. Most people here are going to be familiar with G2I because you're a part of our community. But if you're joining us for the first time, G2I's mission is to create custom talent pipelines so that our clients don't have to. We have a unique approach to hiring that combines customizable vetting, flexible terms, and tailored customer service that gives us an advantage. So whether you're hiring 1,000 engineers to work on complex AI projects, or you're looking for highly skilled individuals for your MVP, we can scale to your needs. And lastly, since we grew up in the open source ecosystem, we host our annual software developers conference every year called React Miami in April. All of those details are live now on reactmiami.com. And for the first time ever in 2026, in the same week as React Miami, we are also launching our first AI conference called AI Engineer Miami. This is a partnership event with the AI Engineer World's Fair that takes place in San Francisco every year. They have partnerships around the world, such as New York and Paris, and then recently Miami, which we'll be hosting, as well as Australia and other locations to come. So, a few rules of engagement for today. We have two different places where you can interact, or three different places where you can interact and engage with us. So there's the chat. Feel free to leave comments on anything that we discuss in the chat as we go along. Justin and Mike are going to be focused on the conversation, but feel free to have some discussion over there as we go. There's a Q&A button. So we are going to have about 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. So all of your questions that you have, please drop them in there when we get to that section. We're going to go through them one by one and answer all of your questions. And even though Justin and Mike can't see you, there is a way that you can share your emotions or sentiment towards the discussion with emoji reactions. They will be able to see those. So if they tell a joke, it helps to like send a little laughing emoji. That way, like we know that it didn't fall flat. But in any case, at the very, very end, we're going to announce some winners for a raffle. So we're actually doing a raffle for today's session, which is brand new. So one of the raffles is going to be for a Cause of a Kind swag pack. So this is going to be a custom t-shirt shipped directly to you, as well as a few other goodies. And then the other thing that we are raffling off is a consultative session with Justin and Mike to get one-on-one advice. And then for everyone attending today, you're going to get access to this platform called Fin Forecasting with an exclusive discount. So Fin Forecasting, I'll let Mike and Justin explain more if they want later, but basically it's project management for financially conscious companies. So you take your typical product management tools like Jira or Monday or whatever and incorporate financial forecasting in it. So AKA never lose money on a project again. So how we're going to start. How you win this raffle. Basically, there's going to be two prompts. And the first prompt I'm going to ask you now, leave your answers in the chat. And then the second prompt is going to come up in the middle of our session. And then you're going to leave your answers in the chat again. Thea and Sanjana, who you guys know from the community, they are in the background right now. They're going to be reading all of your answers. And from the answers, they're going to pick their favorite ones and we'll announce the winners of each raffle based on the responses at the very end. Okay, now let's get to it. So about our guests. First, Justin is the co founder and CEO of Cause of a Kind, a 17-time award winning creative technologist, CSS Design Awards judge, and the host of the Strictly From Nowhere podcast. He brings expertise in brand strategy and scaling from zero to market, having previously consulted for Fortune 500 companies at Bright Edge. And Mike is also the co-founder and CTO of Cause of a Kind. He has 15 years building software and previous roles as lead, like including previous role as lead engineer at the Knot Worldwide, which is like the Knot as in like the wedding industry platform. So Mike also famously, I'm going to say famously, declined offers from Spotify and Netflix to build his own thing. And he brings the developers' authentic perspective here on maintaining world class standards while running a technical business. So, the first prompt before we get started is to tell us about your entrepreneurial journey. What are you working on? And the best answer to this question is going to be the winner of the swag pack, including the t shirt. So, welcome, Justin and Mike. So, as founders of Cause of a Kind, I would like to start by telling us basically the origin story of Cause of a Kind. You guys had really great careers. It sounds like you guys had like careers where it's like, you made it already. You could settle in this role for the rest of your life if you wanted. Um, but then you decided to leave that security to take a huge risk to start your own company. So I'll start with you, Justin. Tell us about leaving a corporate job and starting your own company.
Well, first of all, I have to thank you and I have to thank G2I because I could honestly say, I think Mike can attest to this, that I'm not sure that we would be where we're at as an organization today without G2I. You guys have been a very
Oh, thank
strategic
you.
partner. You have all turned into incredible friends. We know each other in person at this point in the journey. And so I just want to tip my hat. Thank you for including us in all sorts of different ways, and especially on today. But yeah, let me answer your question in the best way that I know how, which is I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know when, I didn't know how, I didn't know what the equation was going to ultimately turn into, but I always had this burning desire to own something of my own, to build something that was meaningful in the world. And I didn't really know what that was going to be. So I started my career going to work. I can honestly say that my dad is responsible for my first job in financial technology. I was employee number 7 at a original startup. I actually see Mike D'Angelo in the comment right now. He's my original CTO and hiring manager. Shout out
Wow,
compliance
shout out.
science. Yeah, rock on. So, my journey really began with going to work. I followed opportunity. It really was not about pursuing passion. It was about I needed a job and I needed a meaningful way to contribute. Technology was something I really was not even aware of. But that journey led to a 15-year career in client services, sales operations, business development, solutions consulting, and I found my way moving through all sorts of different roles, eventually finding my way to Bright Edge and being valuable to some of the most recognizable brands in the world. And along that time, I was really hyper aware of the fact that I was just gaining some incredible skill that would ultimately lend itself really nicely to building a service-based business. But man, Mike, we got punched in the face a few times trying to start a business. It wasn't just like, boom, we started Cause of a Kind and got our first customer. Like we took some licks. We tried to start our own software company a couple of times. The very first one was actually called Membo, which was designed to be like um, centralized membership opportunities on like Main Street. So if you're shopping at the dry cleaner, but you also get a local coffee shop and local pizza guy. But man, we got quickly outpaced by some of the other incumbents in that category. So that was our first failure. Membo never saw the light of day. We eventually moved into another application, which was for our passion. Mike and I are lifetime climbers. It's how we met when we were 15 years old. We still climb at least once a week today. And so we decided to make a climbing application. That also was a spectacular failure. And so we just follow the way of the world. And Cause of a Kind was born in the surf lineup. We both live right here on Long Island. The ocean's a big part of our lives, especially mine. It's in my backyard. And one day we were out in the surf lineup and the idea came to us, what would somebody pay for a one of a kind experience to surf with a legend, like let's call it Kelly Slater or something? attached to a cause or a mission that people care about. At the time, it was like the Surfrider Foundation. And so this idea of one of a kind experiences for causes that we care about was born into the wrinkle, which is cause of a kind. And so again, third software application that we aim to build, that was also outpaced by a company called Omaze. If anybody is familiar with that, they've done an incredible job of being a very successful organization. And so instead of changing the name and continuing to chase our tails, we just continue to pivot. So I think that really is the essence of the story. And the question is, both Mike and I just have this insatiable desire to build something. And the amount of times that we've changed and pivoted and chased a brand or chased a rename or something like that, all of that was almost irrelevant. It was the agreement between the two of us that we would pursue building something meaningful that could change our lives and change the story and get us out of our careers. I could keep going because there's a long list of stuff, but I can't dominate the first 10 minutes of our show here.
No, that's great. And Mike, I'd love to hear from your perspective too, because, as a lead engineer, I mean, a lot of engineers' career trajectory is you start off as a junior engineer, you learn the ropes, you build your skills, and then ideally you end up in a lead engineer, principal engineer, or architect role, something like this. So that's the pathway. And it looks like you got, to lead engineer for a really big corporation. Sounds like a really great job. Being a first employee engineer building the projects is like very intimidating position to be in. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to take that risk.
Yeah. And I think my parents probably still think I was nuts for leaving such a good job. And so like that, I think one of the reasons you take the risk though is you figure, well, I can always go back. One of the things I wasn't always a software engineer. I didn't get out of college with a degree in computer science. So I found this later. But what I remember, I graduated college in 2008, and that was like another kind of recessionary time, and it was kind of awful. And what I remember was having basically no skills. Like I got out of college, I was like, I don't really have any skills that make me desirable. And so when I found engineering later through a friend's company, I don't know if I planned to be a software engineer for a long time, but I gradually ended up liking it and then loving it. And then once I acquired the skills, by the time I was at the Knot and I could confidently pass interviews and knew what I was talking about, I always said, well, I can always go back to that because you can't take the skill away. So what I will regret is not trying to do this entrepreneur thing and giving it my best shot full time. But hey, if I end up, what's the worst that happens? I end up back at the same job 6 months from now because I was well liked there. I felt like, oh, well, I could go back there. I could go somewhere else. So it felt like there was a lot of options and a lot of, just a lot of options in being an engineer, I think. And then the thing that kind of gets you though is once you start, it's not quite that simple. So I always tell people it wasn't really taking the leap that was hard. It was a year later after we had a lot of projects. And then like at the end of that year, we actually had like a bunch of drop off in projects, and hiring people was extremely tough as a small business because when you hire at a place like the Knot, you have great salaries and benefits. And when you're a tiny little business, you're like, oh, wait, I can't offer that. So the pool of people that I can even hire is incredibly small. And I have these big ups and downs and swings in business. Not to mention, we took some small business loans to make sure that we had like health insurance and things because we had kids and wives and all that good stuff. So you end up in this weird position where you're like, oh, wait, I can't just go back to work now. I kind of have to make this thing work. So you're forced into it. So the taking of the leap was fairly easy because I was naive enough to be like, well, I could always just go back. And then like, if you take it far enough, it's like, I say, it's kind of like rock climbing, you're moving your way up the mountain. And at a certain point, you can't climb down the thing that you've already gone up. So you really can't do that. And so thankfully that kept us going.
Yeah. Now, you guys had like a few different projects like a few different companies that you were working on. I don't know if you did all of the projects together. It sounds like you guys just did Cause of a Kind together, right?
We did
Or did you do all of those startups together?
We did all of those startups
Okay.
together. They never passed the testing phase. That's what I always tell people. Like I would always build them a little bit. And I always felt like I never mind building a project that doesn't go anywhere because I at least learn something from it. So I always just kind of like having lots of side projects, as I'm sure most engineers do. So I'm always like, well, I'll build it in some like weird language or framework, and at the very least, I'll walk away with some knowledge. But then we would do the landing page thing, and honestly, that stuff's really hard. That's never been my forte. But that was really the idea. Is like, oh, we'll try and get these past the marketing phase, and they never really got past it. Or we found another company that was so much bigger that had already captured like a massive amount of market share we couldn't get past.
Got it. That's actually good because it brings us into the next topic of landing your first client. So that was my suspicion that like the other companies didn't work out because, well, at the end of the day, you're selling something. And if you don't have anybody that's going to buy it, then that's, usually the cause of startups to fail, right? So now you guys have landed on cause of a kind. You've pivoted, you have a growing business. So tell us about landing your first client. How do you do that? How do you get customers?
Well, I'll
I'll
tell you
start with
that,
you,
like,
Justin. Yeah.
yeah. Like, originally, honestly, this was all by accident. Mike and I were just ready to continue to try and build the next thing. We're so apparel heavy here. Like, everything is so brand focused. Cause of a Kind was an e-commerce store trying to create custom one of a kind apparel before it became an agency. There's a whole story of stuff that we just tried to build. We made like a beeswax company, a beeswax surf company. Like, there's just a ton of stuff. We were just fighting entrepreneurs trying to figure it out. But what happens when you just follow opportunity? And the passion side of this is between me and Mike. Like, the partnership that we had forged, this was just about having fun. This was like, we're low risk, we have amazing jobs. I traveled 200 plus days a year in 2019 before the pandemic. Like, life was good. We were just building something fun on the side. And it is literally by accident that our first customers came our way. Our very first customer that was willing to exchange cash for a web experience was a vendor at my local CrossFit gym one day. And we just got to talking, and she found out I was like a website guy. And she was just like, I'm looking for a guy. Would you be the guy? And 12,000 bucks later or something like that, she was our very first customer that gave us the idea of like, hey, well, if we can't figure out how to build something for ourselves, why don't we build stuff for other people? And that's how Cause of a Kind was born. And so that ripple effect, this business is highly referral based, as most businesses are in the service industry. And so our networks of working professionally are what seeded our very first year. The moment that we found that, like, hey, we could really make a thing of this and get out of our full-time day jobs, our network just woke up. We got like, what, Mike, $500,000 in opportunity that just like showed up in, I want to say, in the same quarter, that just gave us
Oh
the
yeah.
opportunity to just say like, whoa, like, we can staff these and leave our jobs at the same time. And we're going to hedge our bet by taking out a small business loan. And we're going to hire a team so that it's not Mike that has to be hands-on keyboard, and we can really build a company. And so there are the first bad decisions that we made. When opportunity shows up to you, how you handle those opportunities, those are the reasons why Mike says it wasn't really leaving our jobs. It was what happened a year later when your network slims down, when you didn't invest in a marketing motion and an advertising strategy and a client acquisition and a retention flow. And so it's not the original moment of finding your first customers. It's what happens 12, 24 months later when you're trying to remain in business that is actually the real challenge that I have ages of wisdom to offer whoever is interested.
Nice. Yeah. You mentioned partnerships, which I think, as far as our perspective goes at G2I, is pretty much the direction that we're almost exclusively focused on at this point. We've been in business for about a decade. We've done all kinds of strategies to get clients. And at this point, I think it's true, if I am up to date enough, that we have $0.00 dedicated to ad spend on Google
Smart.
and Facebook and all of these
Smart.
platforms. And
Right.
all of our marketing dollars are going into in-person events like happy hours, mixers, um and like a very small curated batch of developer influencers, YouTube content, things like that, and podcasts and things of that nature. And it's $0 just of LinkedIn, like blasted into the ether and hoping something comes back. So that took us a while to get there and to see that. Obviously, we have our conferences too. How did you guys come around to partnerships as a strategy?
I'll tell you one of the most powerful things, and then I'm going to let Mike actually take the rest of the answer. But one of the most powerful things that we ever pursued is finding true fans, is finding people. And you guys do this strategy too. I'm an example of a true fan of G2I. Like when I think of hiring top talent, I think of G2I. That's what you want. I want, when you think of building custom software, building a business from zero to market, or finding your ways through the trials and tribulations of startup, I want you to think of Cause of a Kind. So when you find true fans, there's no better marketing and advertising strategy out there, where people are like just on the street rocking your logo, singing your song. That is the most valuable thing in business, especially in service, in hand-to-hand combat businesses, in people-to-people businesses like the both of us are in. But Mike, I'll pass it to you, because from an engineer's perspective, building a business, you have built a gaggle of businesses for our clients. Like, what are the things that you think are working from an acquisition perspective?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it's funny that we all kind of mentioned like the social ads is investing $0. I agree with that 100%. I found G2I through a podcast. Definitely. I was listening to a podcast and you guys came on the podcast, and I was probably on the train because we were commuting to work, and we had landed like 2 contracts from a connection, just a referral of somebody that we had met. And I didn't want to quit my job yet. So I thought, oh, how hard can this be? I'll just have like another staff and I'll just manage them from my computer, which turned out to be a lot harder than it sounds, for a number of reasons that we can get into. But we got those through the referrals, and I think I didn't think we wanted to accept it. Even now, we didn't want to accept that it had to be partnerships. We were always like, there's got to be a way to make the ads work. There's got to be a way to make to just keep that faucet. We always hear these marketers talk about this like elusive faucet. Like, I just turn the faucet on and I get all the business, and then I turn it off when I have too much business. And I'm always like, okay, enough. Like, because and now I realize that's not how it works at all. The partnerships were the thing. It's the only thing that I felt like we could compete on, because we realized that like a lot of our customers, because we just started asking them like, why did you choose us? Why did you like us? And it always came back to, well, we really like Mike and Justin. We just liked you guys. We wanted you guys. We wanted you involved. And we were like, okay, we should kind of accept this. And that's when we started to go down the path of partnerships, in-person stuff, especially because one of our unfair advantages is we live in New York and New York City. That's an incredible unfair advantage. There are agencies all over the world that message me on LinkedIn that their founder is going to be in New York and they want to meet for coffee. And I'm like, we live here, so we should be like, it's clear they're spending thousands of dollars to come here, and we're throwing thousands of dollars away to try and compete anonymously on the internet, or through like all these different plays. So let's like leverage that unfair advantage of being here in New York and in this market. And that's really where it came around. And then we also kind of realized that most of our customers were non-technical people. So we had to try and change the partnerships we were looking for, like more creative agencies that needed developers, or people that were trying to build but didn't really know someone technical that could help them out. So we started pivoting into those kind of venues where we stood out.
I like that idea of an unfair advantage. I think that is a really good thing to try and identify in your own business. Like, let's say you don't live in New York City. What is your unfair advantage? I think that our unfair advantage, with which anybody can copy at any time, is that our CEO is extremely likable. Like, he is like, I've never seen him make an enemy anywhere he goes. And so he's just like the nicest guy. We also have a great conference, like I think React Miami is an unfair advantage, but yeah, you don't have to spend a ton of money if there's an unreasonable effectiveness to being somebody that people want to talk to. Business, entrepreneurship, running a company, everything is very stressful. It feels like somebody's always after your money. Feels like you could, there's a lot of days where it feels like everything can go under. So just connecting with people who like slow your central nervous system down a little bit. I think that is very valuable. So I want to take a pause real quick and give the second prompt. This is for the raffle for the consultative session. So this is a one-on-one session with Justin and Mike about your company, how they like they're going to give you advice that can actually help you. So leave in the chat your answers to what's your biggest blocker right now, and the winner of this question, they get to get this consultative session. So let's talk about money, because money is the basis of all of these things, and it's scary. Most people who go into starting a company are not financially, like they're not finance people, right? So bootstrapping, the mistakes that you made, timing your exit, let's get into all of that, and we'll start with Justin again and then pass over to Mike.
I think yeah, money kind of rules all business, right? I think it's the thing that businesses chase. It's the validation of doing good work. It's the thing that keeps that engine moving. You're looking for growth year over year and trying to outpace things like inflation. And like, there's all sorts of things that you need to know about running a financially conscious company. Mike and I didn't know any of that. None of that. The way that we mismanaged money is like actually laughable and painful, and we'll have to deal with that for a decade. Like those are the real things that you don't even know that you're confronting. And so what does money management really look like? It really looks like being incredibly conservative. It really looks like staying at your job excessively longer than you think you're able to. It looks like maybe like ride your job till you get put on a performance improvement plan or you get fired. Like ride that thing to the very, very end. It's really contrarian advice, but one of the things that I wish that me and Mike did is I wish that I freed Mike first and then I stayed at my job longer, because there was more projects to build than there was pipeline to close, than there was marketing and advertising strategy to deploy. There was more projects for us to have built a team around than there was for me to hemorrhage my business. I needed healthcare. I needed insurance. I needed basic benefits. I needed to match my salary and my income. I had a family. I have a house. But all of those things added pressure. And guess what? It's multiplied by 2 because there's me and Mike. So the way that we managed money originally was really like a full hedge against today, of our future selves. It was a bet against this has to work. We're going to kick the can all the way down the road. And like, hopefully in a few years, 5 to 10 years, this was all just worth it. I can tell you honestly, as of today, 5 years later, it's just starting to be worth it. Like the amount of days that Mike and I have had sleepless nights, the amount of times that we were not able to take our income in our owner's draw, and the amount of times that we had to lay people off or cut people's salaries, or like quietly reduce somebody's hours to 0 and just put them on the bench, or the amount of times I've had to cash infuse, the amount of times I've burned my savings account to 0. Like it just now, I would say in the last 12 to 18 months, is a stable, reliable, recurring experience that we know is just going to keep going. If I closed Cause of a Kind tomorrow, I'll be getting referrals for the next 5 years. And so it took a lot to get there. And so many of the decisions that we made originally, specifically about money management and deploying capital, were just basic inexperience. It wasn't even that Mike and I are bad personally with money. Like Mike's an amazing saver. We're super frugal. I'm like totally not trying to just spend money frivolously. This is not about, buying shiny objects and new cars and upgrade your lifestyle. Nah, this was just running a business. What do you spend money on? You spend the least amount of money to remain in a profitable position for as long as possible. And so that's an interesting wrinkle that we talk about with our customers, with our teams, with other engineers that are looking to build things, because there's such a alluring idea out there, which is use other people's money. And that's just that equation of what me and Mike did. We didn't use other people's money. I leveraged my home. I leveraged my assets. I took on small business loans. I just ate it personally for years and still do. But you play with other people's money, It's the same equation. It just looks a little bit different. So the things that we have done to mature, to become a financially conscious company, all the way to creating our own software solution, which will prevent us from ever losing another dollar in this business again, called fin forecasting. Like, we have just, what we have gained is an absolute master class of running a financially conscious company. I think Mike and I would both qualify as CFOs right now if we wanted a career change. And like, that's just what needed to be done. And we sought out the mentorship. We made all the mistakes. We never make the same mistake twice. The two of us have a code together that prevents us from ever doing anything again that didn't work in the past. And so that whole story of becoming is the reality. It's not like I started and how I begin businesses today. Mike and I have a portfolio of companies. How we build today is a hell of a lot different than how we started Cause of a Kind, which is just throw money at the wall and everything hopefully will work out. And so this is a big time learning experience. My number one piece of advice is, before you deploy capital, seek mentorship, invest in yourself, which is a really good common thing that you'll hear from people who have been down the road. Invest in yourself. What does that look like? It looks like catching mentorship, finding coaches, finding people that know about topics that you just don't know about. Consulting folks that have been successful in this category. All of those things can lead to minimizing your exposure to risk. And I'm totally not risk averse. Like, I'm the guy between the two partnership, which is like, yo, let's burn this thing down. Let's drive it off a cliff. We'll just build the plane while we're falling. And Mike's like, no, we're not going to do it that way. Let's be a little bit more cautious. Let's just wait and see how the world pans out. And the two of us together, somewhere in the middle, do what is best for the business rather than what's best for ourselves. And that's taken a lot of trial tribulation. There's been a lot of wisdom collected on that process over the years.
Yeah, I bet. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's right. We like, the hindsight is always 2020, and we say like, I would have gone first, and then just, there are things though that are hard that I don't think you mentioned, that like, maybe, I think hindsight is it gives you the illusion of 2020 vision. Like, oh, if only we had done this, right? Like, sometimes I say maybe the pressure of the loan and messing up made us persevere when we would have quit. The other thing, like both of us leaving, a big issue is health insurance. You kind of touched on it for a second, but like, in the United States, a solo business owner gets destroyed on health insurance. The only thing that really makes it affordable is using something like JustWorks or a PEO plan and having a business partner. Because once you have two, you can get a PEO and get health insurance for like half of what it is on the exchanges. Or so that's like one of my kind of pieces of advice to people. I'm like, figure out that because that's not a small thing to make up. I mean, it's an insane amount of money. And then the other piece of it is, we had come from like startups and SaaS type businesses, and it's very different than running an agency, in that like SaaS companies tend to measure something called burn rate and churn and MRR, and like, real business. They're like, no, you cannot be burning money faster than you're bringing it in. And so for us in this position, in like a non-investable, we had sort of thought of like, oh, well, we'll take this loan and eventually we'll about burn rate. Think again, especially if you're using your own money. Like, there is a way to adjust your business to be profit first. And I think somebody had mentioned that in the chat. Like, really think about how to be profitable first, because you actually owe that not just to yourself, but to your staff. By running an unprofitable business, you put them in a risky position, and they don't know it because they're still collecting a great salary and feeling good. And so if you're overpaying people or paying people before you need them, or just like, because I want to acquire this talent, all things that venture-backed startups have a luxury of doing, you're taking on a crazy amount of risk as a bootstrap startup. So that was kind of a big thing that we really did learn the hard way in that first year, because we really had very bad examples of how to build businesses from a time period that kind of seems like it's not coming back in the way that it was. Maybe if you're a pure AI kind of startup, you get that luxury again. But for most people in the startups we're seeing, you have to show profit, you have to show cash flow, you have to run a healthy business. So that's where I would kind of say is like the things I would change and the things I would really think about are really, really focusing on that business health and thinking about what you can afford. And for us, sometimes that looks like, hey, a deal is here and we actually have to queue it out because we don't have enough staff to do it at this moment, but we have a project ending and we want to start it, instead of being like, hey, we'll just hire and build and hire and build. And then when a drop off happens, you end up in these really weird places where you have to lay people off and get into these swings.
So I was just checking the Q&A, and I think we'll move into that. And I was debating whether to announce the raffle winners now or after the Q&A. I think after the Q&A because I just got the results for this. But it sounds like from the chat too, the biggest blocker for a lot of people here is the finance aspect. So I think, yeah, this is all really, really helpful advice. Before we start in on the Q&A, or leading us into the Q&A, I should say, I would be remiss not to talk about AI because it's everywhere. So just note, let us know how you are using AI at Cause of a Kind. I'm sure that you're using it at least for your development work, at the very least. But what are some of the ways? And I'll flip it around and I'll ask Mike this first, and then Justin, you can answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's the development work is probably the biggest use case for AI, and I would say for at least the last 12 months, I have written code with AI in some form every single day. And Claude Code is my tool of choice. I've used some of the other stuff, the IDEs like Cursor and those, but I keep coming back. I really like Claude Code. And I find that it's really pretty necessary. It's definitely sped up our workflow, like I would say like 4 to 5 times in terms of like projects, what I can handle personally and what our other engineers can handle. It's increased that workload, our velocity. There are some pitfalls though. Obviously, because now scope creep is less problematic than it would have been in the past. Like a single piece of scope creep for us in the past would have turned into it can like derail a project, the due dates, sure, the deadlines. You don't run into that as much. The problem is you still have the problem of, am I building the right thing at the right time for the right people? So you can like scope creep yourself into building 10 features now. All of them stink. And so you still have this issue of like, AI will build whatever you want, but did you build the right thing? And slimming scope is still a huge part of our process, where it's like, hey, we really, really need to be very, very good at evaluating, was this a necessary thing to build? And then the other side of it is your QA time as an engineer goes up. Like there are days when I've got, the bunch of agents running, they finish things and I still got to review all that stuff. So you're now like in this other position where you're like, okay, so there are some days the day ends and I go, I'll just review it tomorrow. I'm not going to merge it today. Like you want it to just like, you want it to be like throw over the fence ready so badly. So as great as AI is, it's still not so great where I can just like prompt it, not even look at it, merge it and run with it. And I really wish that, you end up kind of wishing that was the case, but it's not. So in terms of development, it's really important because it does get our clients a lot more at a much lower price. Like we are able to help way more people build startups at prices that would have been ludicrous. I think that, Justin, you said it, $12K when we started for a website. We're charging like half that for like full on MVP software builds, like soup to nuts, out of the gate. It's kind of crazy how quickly we can get some things done for people. And those folks wouldn't have used us, or they just wouldn't have built software in the first place. So on the flip side of it, even though, okay, like we're doing more with less people, there is so much more software that people want to build now that it's sort of like the market's expanded, where people are like, hey, I've been using this thing. It kind of stinks. Could you build me a custom solution? Actually, we could now. With that, plus some serverless technology, it actually works pretty well. So there's just an interest that's coming that wasn't there over the last 3 years.
It's so true. Yeah, AI pretty much anybody can at least like work out an idea in like Replit or V0 or something like that. Like Claude Code, you might not like if you have no coding experience, maybe that's not the tool for you, but you could go into V0 or Replit with no coding experience and prompt something just to scratch an itch and then decide, do I want to go to cause of a kind for like the real application? Um,
That's it. That's it.
yeah. And then Justin, I'm interested to know on your side, the business side of the business.
You know, AI looks different for me and my side of our house. I'm clearly not using Claude Code. I very rarely am using like generative AI platforms. I dabble with like the Lovables and the V0 just to like have a competitive conversation. Those I'm so grateful for because that conversation from an acquisition strategy just appeared in our laps, like call it in the last 6 months or so, where that moment of folks that are scratching that itch and build that little prototype and then want to deploy it to the world, they get to that last mile, which is the most critical. They don't realize they have vulnerabilities. They don't realize that they have security problems. They don't realize that deploying something to a production ready environment and taking payments from people, that's like not trivial. So like this
Mm-hmm.
moment of supporting non-technicals that have built something that looks really cool, but that they know now after trying to bang on it for 30 hours that they need help. So from a moment in time, AI has changed the narrative about how we acquire customers. But I'll also tell you from a soft skills perspective, even though my title is CEO, I'm not a CEO. I'm the chief do everything other than code here. Like that it is my responsibility to do everything other than ship code. And so I'm a student of leveraging AI tools across the ecosystem. For example, we talked about Strictly from Nowhere, the podcast. That is a fully AI produced experience. Riverside
Wow.
platform, the tooling that they provide, that is 100% tip to tail AI. I have no team, $0 investment. So what is possible to accelerate new things that you want to test and create? Things like Canva for our marketing materials and our consistency across the brand development, 100% AI driven. I'm really using like very little manual of these creative tools and using prompt oriented to create things that are just meaningful and valuable. The way that we are testing new ideas and building new things like communities or trying to for us, I'll leverage Claude to just help me dog food an idea about what does the business look like what am I missing, poke holes in this. I'll take somebody's RFP, I'll take somebody's email thread. For me, the ability to navigate complexity on my side of the house, I feel like I have a team of soft skilled individuals that can help me digest. And so this has allowed me to accelerate in ways where I don't feel at all the need to staff the things that I do. And what
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm able to accomplish would be enough for an old school team of 5 or team of 10, and they would have work for days. So what I'm able to accomplish just sitting in, an 8-hour session here at the desk is unfathomable from my previous career. And so
So,
I think when you think about, again, this all comes down to financial consciousness. I could absolutely throw a team, and if that team is doing the right thing, they'll leverage the AI tools too, but then I'm on the hook for their salary.
yeah.
So from a financially conscious perspective, I have now replicated myself. I'm able to do things in parallel, right? Like when Claude is thinking, I can run another prompt in another session for another thing that I'm working on. It helps us to build tools like fin forecasting, like that just idea was created. I saw something incredible that Mike did yesterday, which is like somewhere in between building, and it's like using Claude to create UML diagrams and digest a customer's idea and like
Mm-hmm.
flow chart together how this build is going to play out. It's not all just about shipping code. This is about leveraging the ecosystem of AI solutions and like how can that accelerate a business before deploying capital. And that for me is the name of the game. Like, where can I not spend money but have exceptional
Yeah.
value created?
Yep. There's a limitless way to use this creatively in your business. I mean, heck, one of the ways that I use it is just like, how do I respond to this email nicely? But
Totally. Been there.
it's like
Been
literally
there.
from the smallest thing to like help me run a podcast. But I want to get to the questions from like Gabe and Eddie and Oliver. So starting with Gabe, after refocusing from career and moving more into entrepreneurial ventures, how long was that journey? Was it quick or a long process? It does sound like there was like quite some overlap. More specifically, how do you know how long to hang in there before refocusing on your individual career?
I'll give you my 2 seconds, and then I love how Mike's perspective is on this type of a question. My perspective is it is still happening. Like, I still use my former life in pretty much everyday conversation, and the things that I was able to accomplish and the brands that I've worked with and the network that I was able to create for myself. For me, it's like, it's just part of it. Like, I don't know if there was ever like a full transition away from that other life. It's still on my mind. But I think for Mike, this might have been a little bit of a different equation, just because it's the compounding of skills and experience. So Mike, go for it, man.
Yeah. That, I mean, that's what I was gonna say. Is like you're always acquiring skills. So like that's the way I always looked at it. Like no matter what, I'm having an experience. I'm getting experience. And what's interesting is even when you think you're having a bad experience, sometimes it's really a very valuable one.
Yep.
Like one of my first jobs after college, I worked for Enterprise Rent a Car. So I talked to people about this, and I was not a software engineer. I was like the person on the counter, and the name of the game was selling the insurance, those like insurance packages, and or upselling you into heavier, better cars. And I'm not a salesperson by nature. I'm not really an extroverted person by nature. You know, like I would leave that job absolutely exhausted because I worked at the airport. You'd shake 50 hands a day, and you had to basically take three no's from everybody because everybody says no. It's not like anybody goes, give me the insurance. Like you
Yeah.
wish that would happen. Right. And so you have to like, and I had to learn to become something that was very unnatural to actually be competitive in that job. Um, and then jump all the way forward to like now running my own business. I'm so glad I have that experience because that's really the superpower, I think, is now like blending the engineering with that kind of that sales experience. And even as an engineer in a company, the idea that everything's a sale, like when you have an idea and you want to get people on board with it, you hear so many engineers who's like, nobody's listening to me. They get so frustrated and they're not realizing that like everything is a sale. Even the idea you have to try to appeal to the other engineers on your team from and like learn what their perspectives are and how they think of things to try and get your point across. So that experience comes all the way back full circle. I was a forward deployed engineer early in my career and an integrations engineer helping the implementation team. And that's a ton of my job now. And then with AI, that's become like a very, very viable career path. That whole forward deployed engineer, solutions engineer, everybody wants that now. And that's so much of what I do. So at the time, it didn't seem that way. I was like, oh, I want to work on like harder things, or I want to be you look at like I'm not doing the thing I want to be doing right now, or I'm not in the business full time. But you're learning things at your job, and especially if you really try and say, I'm going to break out of my comfort zone. Maybe I'm going to do presentations. Maybe I want to do cold calling with the sales team. I like bet you they would do that just for fun, like or something like that. You're going to find yourself in a place that becomes valuable to you later on. So I always feel like everything is worth it. It takes longer than you think though. Two, three times the time. Like we've been in business for 9 years technically, but we've only been full time for 4 years. So think about that. All that time early. I remember taking sales calls, leaving the office in the financial district for lunch and running to like Hudson Yards to take a meeting with a potential client and trying to make it back to work in time, an hour later. So we would do that for years. And for people that just didn't buy anything, just terrible ideas. I mean, I talk about like one thing that's interesting about this is I've heard of a lot of bad ideas or ideas that would go nowhere. And we were just trying everything to make all of that work. And so I would say, like, how do you know when the right moment is? You're not going to know. Like for us, we just landed a 6-figure contract. That was the moment that we were like, we're leaving full time. We landed our first 6-figure contract. Like on paper, someone was going to pay us almost like $200,000 for a project we could leave. But you know what? You managed to burn through that money real fast too with a staff of
Yeah.
software engineers. So yeah, you'll never see hundreds of thousands of dollars go so fast as when you own a business.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's funny. There's like this quote that I love that like it's like $1,000 is not a lot of money to have, but it is a lot of money to owe. Like you could just make
yeah.
whatever number is relevant to you. Like $100,000 is not a lot of money to have, but it's a lot of money to owe. Like money is totally different when you're spending it. Um, okay, I want to get to Eddie's question. How did you develop your network? Were you posting, building in public? What was your strategy to have a network that woke up? This is so good because you guys do events, you have podcasts, like you're around. I see you at conferences. So, like, what's your strategy here? How do you develop your network?
I'm going to take a little note out of Gabe's book. Your lovely founder.
Our CEO.
Like
Yeah.
you, when this all really changed for Mike and I is when we woke up and said it's founder led. Like you have to be willing to sacrifice, to promote yourself, to like walk the walk, be everywhere. And now what does that look like, right? Like it's not just about like constant posting on LinkedIn. I can tell you I have posted for probably 700 days in a row. Swear to God, multiple times a day. That is not the thing. That's supplemental. That's like the way to distribute whatever else you are doing. And so that's not where the story starts. That's not even where it stops. You said some of the other things that we have pursued. The podcast has been tremendously valuable for us as a business, not even necessarily from a lead gen perspective, but from increasing our surface area for luck. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about networking. That's the easiest cold call sale I've ever made in my career of sales, is asking somebody to be on a podcast.
Yep.
And it's absolutely low calorie. It is non-assuming. I have nothing to sell you. I want to give you value first. Mike and I left our jobs of commuting into New York City for 15 years, and I just did not want to go back with a young family for all these networking events. So I
Yeah.
said, well, why don't we just start our own networking event? And 15 events later, we have the Long Island Technologists Meetup. It meets every 45 days, and we bring in whatever the world wants to deliver to us for a technologists meetup at a modest coffee shop. That now has increased the surface area of luck for us. I've made hires from there. I've seen relationships form from there. I've seen people get jobs and internships from that. You think about the way that you build a network is not like what I have acquired. It's what am I going to do to represent as valuable to people today? So this is about being in the world awake. This is when you go to the coffee shop before you go to work. You don't just keep your heads down with your headphones on. You like pretend it's the 90s and like make a joke with the barista behind the bar and like and talk about what's going on in your world, and like that matriculates into a conversation. This is really about like as you walk through the world, what are the ways that you put value in people's pockets? One of the things that I think Mike and I are known for at this point is my business card. My business card is a $2 bill, like
I still
legitimately
have it.
real cash. I put it in your pocket. And so I was really tired of going to conferences and meetups and like just being on the street. And one time I went to a conference and I saw my business card on the bathroom floor. And I was just like, man, like, I don't even know who that was from. I've handed out like 50 business cards. These things are not cheap. No matter how cheap you make them, they're still not cheap. And I was like, this is silly. It's not working. How do I give value to people in a moment that's memorable? And I can honestly say probably, I would say maybe $1,000-1,500 later in $2 bills, this $2 bill is responsible for generating amazing things for our business. Not only cash and new clients, but new relationships, new smiles. It's the thing that people, they don't remember my name, but they're like, you're the guy that gave me that $2 bill. It's about creating an impression. So I just move through the world differently right now. I don't really think about networking. I don't really think about building my network. I think about I feel valuable. I want people to think that I'm valuable. What is the thing that I can deliver to them of value? That $2 bill is just a cheeky way of putting your defenses down and of striking a really cool conversation from that. And so I encourage whoever you are And if you're concerned about where does your network come from and what does network actually equal for you, is network a lead gen source, or is network opportunity driven? Is network for headspace? Like, what do you need your network for? Think of a way that opens a door and then leaves an impression. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of my way. I think Mike treats his network a little bit differently, and Mike's network has contributed differently to Cause of a Kind. So I'd be curious to hear what you think about networking.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who doesn't like particularly love networking, like like Justin's the person who like strike up a conversation with the barista. I'm not that person. Let's just, like not that I'm not personable, but I'm not as outgoing as he is at these types of events. So I kind of, in terms of the social media, I do think that it's interesting. You do kind of have to post pretty regularly. I try to. One of the things that I was challenged with though is, you have to try and post for who your customer is and less for who, um, and less for like yourself in some sense. As a developer, for instance, like you'll post like how-to articles or things you're thinking, and I still post stuff like that to kind of feed the beast, because I still want to meet other developers and things like that. And it's the thing that I think of all the time. So it's always, something to do. But I realized that like my buyer isn't like debating the merits of like TypeScript versus Ruby or something like that. That is, you know what I mean? Like the person who is going to buy my service doesn't care about that. And so I kind of realized that because I would follow like other fractional CTOs and stuff. And I'd be like, I really like this person's content. And then like Justin would point out to me like, yeah, but you're liking it and you're not their buyer. Like that's the problem, is like, yeah, you like their content. You're not the person buying their service. So they're like posting to the wrong crowd. So I think as developers, it's a challenge to figure out how to create content for the non-technical technical person, like the non-developer, the person who's going to be, because we're really going to be hired by usually product people, marketers, designers. These are folks that are going to look to hire us because they're going to be trying to get their idea to bring it into the world. And that's your power as a developer. So I often challenge myself with that. Like, how am I going to attract this type of person and not get like too into nerding out with the social media stuff? And then like the networking side of things, the same thing. I find that for me, usually I think something I do fairly well is I can kind of talk about these technical concepts at a level that you don't need to understand everything I'm talking about. And I can bring it down to that level. So when we go to in-person events, I usually kind of let the questions come to me, and Justin will kind of introduce me. And then I find that the conversation kind of carries because I am kind of very passionate about what they like and how I would build it and what they're looking at. And I try not to get too in the jargon and too in the weeds with that, like, you don't want to get too into like your favorite library and programming language and those kinds of conversations. Try and think about it from that business perspective. And I think that that's always helped me with the networking. And then you stay passionate too. That passion comes through. That's just like an old sales technique too, is just, if you believe in the product you're selling, you're going to have a much better time talking about it and keeping the conversation going.
Amen. God, that could be like a whole other event. Just networking is a whole topic unto itself. Thanks so much, guys. There are some questions that we didn't get to. You can find Mike and Justin on LinkedIn, send them messages, ask them questions. As you can tell after the last hour, they're super nice guys, full of information and insight that they love to share. So I want to take a minute. Let's announce our raffle winners. So the first winner is for the Cause of a Kind swag pack. Thea is going to be the intermediary here, getting the information to send this stuff out, connect everything, connect all the dots. She's going to send emails. But Cause of a Kind swag pack winner is Evandro Cascais. The project that he's working on is a shooter game about antivirus bots fighting security threats inside of your PC. So nice, super original. Epic. Sounds really fun. But yeah, so you're the swag pack winner, and then the consultation winner is Alex C. Blocker. Alex C. The blocker is fear of failing. He's invested a good chunk in infrastructure, but doesn't have enough clients yet to pay for it. feel that. Actually, that's a great topic to get consultation on, because when we were talking about finance in that section, one of the things that I would have loved to have gone into more is the cost of just developing software, period. Like, so that you can sell software. Like, that's a whole thing. So that's a great person to have a consultation with. So thank you so much, guys. Please check out Cause of a Kind on LinkedIn, check out their podcast. And I'll let you guys, we have 1 minute, so I'll give you guys each like a little sign off. Any last thought that either of
I
you
just
want to
wish
share?
everybody, I wish everybody forward to extraordinary. Keep going.
Awesome.
That's good.
Anything from you, Mike?
Yeah, that's I would say, keep going, persevere, but definitely it's not failing to go back to a gig, to go back to your job. In a lot, like don't want to emphasize, there have been so many times where I have been out of the development flow and then had to just go back to work as an engineer. Like, despite the title being CTO, I still do a lot of engineering here, and there's no shame in that as being part of your business journey. Like, you're going to have all these missteps, so you just have to accept that.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you around the G2I community. We'll see you around the internet, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.